task today is to cause as much confusion as possible within the ships, and to do so we will carry out a 3-2-4 low. The attacks throughout will be at 420 knots, 50 feet MSD, and the target we will concentrate on is Newcastle, which is Type 42, call sign Mike 6 X-ray.
Even as Newcastle slips quietly out to sea, the team from FOST, Flag Officer Sea Training, are planning their timetable of attacks.
Orange is at war with blue. War will follow the normal format, and I'll debrief that in a minute. Going through the sequence of events, we're now departing from the harbour via Pilot X route, QZS 1.
Newcastle's biggest problem is that her overall performance so far in her Thursday war exercises, the Navy's strictest test of operational efficiency, has been rated as satisfactory. In other words, a bare pass mark. So everything now depends on how well she fights these final battles. And the team from FOST will be doing all they can to throw her off balance. The scenario for today's war has Newcastle in command of a task force of 5 Royal Navy warships and a German destroyer. It's their job to escort a naval tanker and to protect it and themselves from a whole range of threats, from mines and submarines to missiles and air attacks. Now all that Newcastle's crew can do is wait for the first of those threats to materialize. They know that anything and everything they do will be watched very carefully indeed by the FOST experts, and each assessment will count towards that all-important final grade.
All position flying Sitrep aircraft now bearing green 20, crossing right to left.
The first attack is already on its way, a communications plane with 2 hunters pretending to be sea-skimming missiles like the Exocets, which proved so lethal in the Falklands. Right in their sights, Newcastle and her sister ship Birmingham, when Newcastle suddenly finds herself faced with a frightening problem and an attack only seconds away.
All positions blind Sitrep, we have a computer freeze being looked into. GDP directed, disregard. GDP indicating blind directing.
What's the point of you directing? You've got nothing down here. All you can do is provide a radar commentary to him. He's, with no weapon systems down here, he's got to have the gun in emergency, and you've got phalanx, and that's it. Alright, so visual indicating and directing is the best thing. All you do is provide a radar service to him.
Visual blind, visual indicating, visual directing.
Right, intelligence suggests that we'll be hit by a fighter gun attack aircraft in the next 3 minutes.
Just for once, this isn't a problem dreamed up by the FOST team. Newcastle's computer failure is a genuine fault, and it's one which cripples the ship's ability to defend herself and the convoy against the coming attacks. It's the worst possible failure happening at the worst possible moment.
Field watch aircraft closing bearing 140.
In a turn 270 at 5 miles each way joining on this circuit. Soon to be 20
Lost computer.
Visual controller, switch to emergency.
Right on, gun controller. All positions flying Sitrep. We have lost the computer.
Full power, sir, to the port phalanx. They said it'll take about 30 minutes to...
If that wasn't enough, there's also a problem with the last resort phalanx gun. Newcastle hands over defence control to HMS Birmingham and tries to deflect the incoming missiles by firing chaff rockets. They spray clouds of metal fragments to confuse the missile radar. The attacks are deflected. in what the Navy calls a soft kill.
There is that despite the fact they lost the weapon and computer, the ship quickly reacted and handed it over the duties to Birmingham. So the ship's reaction to their own defects was quite correct and swift, despite the fact they lost their own weapon systems.
If we lose the computer, we lose nearly all our weapons systems, apart from those which have their own computer system, like the Phalanx gun. And for a lady of this age, she runs on a single computer system, and if we lose that, we've lost a lot. Now that isn't the same for modern ships which are rolling off the stocks now, which have data highways, separate microprocessors, but for us it is.
Well, they've got 2 tracks on them.
No, I don't know what they are. They're inbound.
Okay, got tracks on them.
No allowances will be made for that computer failure. Newcastle will have to fight back by directing the guns and missiles of the rest of the force against each of the attack waves now coming in, one after the other, trying to overwhelm the defences.
Roger, what are they? That raid was taken out, and then we got closed by 2 fighter ground attack aircraft to see how well the enemy had done.
What do you expect to happen next?
Right, what I think will happen next is the aircraft will go out, form up again about 50 miles away, and they'll do it again to us.
Pressure on Newcastle and her crew is increasing by the minute, and the man at the centre of the action is Lieutenant Commander Peter Havelock, who's acting as the air warfare officer. He's coping well, even with the ship's computer out of action, which makes him a prime target for Faust's unwelcome attention.
This is the ops room. Brace! Brace! Brace!
Any moment now, the Fost representative in the operations room will tap him on the shoulder and tell him he's got to pretend to suffer a major heart attack.
Under attack from back to Charlie Fox, 250 at 40
It could almost be funny, but it's a moment when the whole exercise teeters on the brink of chaos. But they get the AWO out, and the captain takes over his job before another attack comes in, a manoeuvre which gets them a pat on the back at the debriefing once the war's over.
Command veto touch drill down there. This is Alpha Bravo. Take on duties of Alpha Whiskey, over.
Soft kill, sir. Very slow start, and the reactions to the initial Zippo calls were very, very tardy. However, he did improve, and what I did like was that notwithstanding the chaos around the plot when we took out AWO and gave him a heart attack, he kept going, and he kept on sowing the chaff and trying his best to defend the ship with soft kill, and that's a big tick in his box, sir. Mind you, he was helped by the stand-in AWO, sir, who I've given a very good assessment to.
And now another threat is developing in addition to the air attacks. One of the ships has detected an enemy submarine, which puts leading seaman Oldham on the spot.
Bravos.
I'm monitoring the 2 dippers and 1 lynx, which are being controlled by the SILAC and the unit to us.
Newcastle is an air defence destroyer, so she carries no weapons to deal with an enemy submarine except her Lynx helicopter, loaded with anti-submarine torpedoes. But can Oldham pass on the information it needs to find the submarine? It calls for a cool head, with Fost noting his every move.
The HC working very hard, did well, although he was a bit slow getting the Sovromeni into the system, 14 minutes in fact, even though it had been on the GOP all the time. But he is working hard and progressing quite well.
What will happen next is for us to gain contact, take one of the unit's aircraft under control and get a weapon into the water. Yeah.
And what's the worst thing the enemy could do to you at this stage?
Hotel 4 X-ray,
this
is X-ray 1 Victor. Telex,
That's exactly what Fost are going to do, because the only way they can see how the crew cope with a strike by a bomb or a missile is to make sure that one of those attacks does get through.
115 at 35 miles. Expect missile release imminent.